All right. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to Wine, Women, and Words. I am Michelle, and with me, of course, is Diana.
Hello.
And this evening it's actually the evening of the TJs, really, because we had the opportunity to speak with TJ Alexander earlier this evening about their latest book, Chef's Choice. And tonight now we are chatting with TJ Klune about his latest book, which is In the Lives of Puppets. And I have to apologize because I jumped right into this and I didn't even make sure that I was going to pronounce your last name correctly. Did I pronounce it
correctly? Yes, you got it correct. That was fine. Thank you.
I always ask before I start, and I've had coffee late in the day, and I think that caffeine just kind of like steamrolled me.
You're totally fine. You got it.
So thank you so much for making time for us. I am a huge fan, so this is a fangirl moment for me. So I'm very happy to have you on the show.
Thank you so much. I appreciate hearing that.
So for our readers who may not yet be familiar with In the Lives of Puppets, can you give us an overview of what the story is about?
Absolutely. In the Lives of Puppets is a not quite retelling, but more so a reimagining of Carlo Collodi's The Adventures of Pinocchio. And what's so interesting about that to me is, as I was on tour for most of the month of May in the US and Canada and the UK for this book. And what I found so fascinating is every single stop I asked people, how many people have read the Collodi story before? And you always have a handful of people raise their hands. And then I asked how many have seen the Disney version, and most everybody in the audience would then raise their hands. And that's how it is with our fables and our fairy tales. And it's very much a Disneyfication of these stories, because so many of these old stories that we've grown up with, that have been around for generations, are dark. They are whimsical, yes, but they are also very dark. One of the biggest things that Disney got right when they did Pinocchio was the scene where the children turn into donkeys. That was frightening. That was absolutely
terrifying.
It was frightening to see that on screen. But the story itself is just so much more interesting with what it does, because it's funnier. It plays around with the reader more. And not only that, to give you an idea of what Collodi was initially trying to do, in the very first draft of this story was going to be released as a serial, as stories often were back then, meaning weekly or monthly in the newspapers or magazines. And the original version of this draft had Pinocchio getting murdered, hung by a tree, for his hubris for wanting to become human. And that was the end of the story. And Collodi's editor came back and said, you're writing the story for children, so you probably don't want to kill off the main character as the ending of your story. So he went back and rewrote it to the story that we now know, where Pinocchio gets to become human as a reward for all of the good that he did, or tried to become a better person. And it's wonderful. It's fascinating. And I love it, because these old stories, just the way that we view them now is always through that Disney lens. And for another example, real quick, you see the remake of The Little Mermaid that just came out, and you saw all these white people getting pissed off because the Ariel was a black actress, and woo-hoo, boo fucking who. If you want to make a racist mind explode, tell them that Hans Christian Andersen, the author of The Little Mermaid, wrote that as a queer love letter because he was gay and in love with a straight man who would never love him back. That's why he wrote The Little Mermaid, as a love letter, basically, to a love that can never be returned. So when you tell these racists that, oh, they're hating on this black actress or Little Mermaid, that the foundation of the entire story is queer, you'll watch their heads explode. It is so wonderful to see something like that. But In the Lives of Puppets is about my love of science fiction and fantasy. I started with Pinocchio. I added in Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. I added in AI by Kubrick and Spielberg. I added in hints of The Matrix. I added in all these different things. But if you are of a certain age, you were probably traumatized by the animated film called The Brave Little Toaster as a child.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. Right. If you remember that film, for those who are maybe a bit younger and do not remember that film, it is about household appliances that come to life. They're sentient, kind of think Toy Story, but with a much darker bent to it. Lampy the lamp dies like halfway through the film and you think he's dead, but then he gets a new lamp. And then there's the sequel that's called Brave Little Toaster Goes to Mars, which we won't need to go there. But it's the thing is that all these bits and pieces of my childhood, my love of science fiction and fantasy has been about putting together into this story about a boy named Victor, a young man who is raised by machines, and what happens when he has to experience the outside world for the very first time. What does it look like for a human being to experience grief for the first time? What does it look like for a human being to feel real fear for the first time? Because he's lived 21 years sheltered and safe. I brought you The House in the Cerulean Sea. I brought you Under the Whispering Door. I gave those books the happy, cozy ending that those characters deserve. In this story, I start them there and then I take it all away.
I love your books. In fact, I feel like it's going to be a TJ Klune year for me, where I've been slowly reading The House in Cerulean Sea, and then my other book club this month was reading Under the Whispering Door. So I had to set that one down so that I could read that one in time for the book club. And I haven't gotten to this one yet, but like I said, it's going to be the year where I read all of your books one after another.
Well, there's a lot there for you to read, so don't worry, I've got you covered for a very long time. And pick a genre. I've probably written in it. It's totally fine.
I won't get bored.
Yeah, exactly.
But one of the things I absolutely love about your books is the way that you capture grief in the story. It's so real and visceral, and for somebody who has recently experienced such strong grief, it's been a way of comfort in a lot of ways for me.
It is, and I know that. You live long enough to know what love is, you'll know loss at some point in your life. And what's so funny about that, and not funny, haha, but like funny in a dark way, is that even though we all grieve, no two people experience grief the same way. It's grief is universal, but it's not universal from person to person to person. I've seen people grieve where they look like nothing is wrong and they're stoic and they don't crack. But I have been in the position where back in the late 2010s, I lost my partner unexpectedly. And that was the foundation for Under the Whispering Door. If you've read that book, you know the dedication is for Eric. And I wrote that book as a way to try to process and understand what grief actually meant. And I don't know that I got the answer I was looking for, but by the end of my time writing that book, I felt a bit of peace that I hadn't felt in a very long time. And with that came an understanding that grief, it is devastating and it is destructive, but grief never really goes away. It doesn't get smaller because we get bigger around it. And it'll calcify, it'll petrify, but every now and then it'll crack to remind you that it's there, that it never truly goes away, but just that you've grown around it to become a stronger person by that point.
Love that.
Now, I know I've read House in the Cerulean Sea and Under the Whispering Door, and I'm just loving In the Lives of Puppets so far. I haven't finished it, so now I feel like I have to emotionally prepare myself for.
I will say without spoilers, the ending of In the Lives of Puppets, the last couple of chapters are, in my opinion, the best writing I've ever done. I
Really?
love those last chapters, especially the very final chapter, because it was something completely different before editing. And then in editing, I rewrote the entire final chapter to give my vision the truth of what I actually wanted it to be, that love and life can be messy and complicated, and not everything can be wrapped up in a tiny bow. That's not how life really works.
Oh, I'm so excited to get to those chapters now, and a little terrified too.
Yeah.
We are such book people because it's only a book community where we're like, this book is going to absolutely devastate you, so you're going to love it. You have to read it.
Yeah,
We're
that's how I have been, because my publisher Macmillan and Tor have purchased the rights to my Green Creek series, which is getting released starting this summer with the first book in hardcover called Wolf Song. It's a 4-book series, and it is basically me trying to see how much a reader can take before I break them. It is is you think you finish the first book and you think, oh my God, there's no way it can get worse than that. Well, guess what? It gets progressively harder through all 4 books. And man, when you get to that ending, it is a war-won ending.
So I'm gonna have a banner year reading your book.
Oh yeah, because Wolf Song gets released in hardcover in July, and then Raven Song, the sequel, gets released in hardcover in August.
Oh, it's the summer of TJ.
It is. And I'm gonna, everybody's like, oh, he's writing cozy characters again. No, I'm about to break a bunch of hearts.
And only well, I shouldn't say only writers and readers, but especially writers can appreciate the yes of something like
get
that.
But what's this is probably a little too much information, but when I'm writing parts that I know is going to make readers be like sobbing and breaking down, I'm cackling. I'm like, I rarely cry and stuff, that because it feels a little too, I don't know, self-serving almost. If I'm like, I'm making myself cry. Oh, this is so good. So on the other side, I'm like, oh man, this is going to make people cry. And this is so good. This is good. I like this.
So do you have a Tears of My Readers mug or cup of any kind? Because I feel like.
Yeah, there's my, this is so funny for me to say. I don't even know why I talk about this stuff. My readers lovingly call themselves the Klunatics, and they have made, I actually have it, do I have it on this desk? No, I don't. They made me a Kleenex box that says it's Klunex instead. And so that's the running joke, is that when you read one of my books, you're going to need to stockpile your Klunex. So
I think that is something that I need to purchase now.
Yeah, exactly. It's wonderful. It's wonderful. I love it.
So can we talk for a moment about how you came up with Nurse Registered Automaton to Care, Heal, Educate, and Drill for Nurse Ratchet's name? Because brilliant.
Thank you. I'm a humble person. I don't like to toot my own horn. I'm so grateful that I have the readers that I do. But when I came up with that acronym, ma'am, I said, I'm a freaking genius. Look at this. Look at what I did. That was such a good moment for me. Writing is very solitary. It's very lonely. So when I get to have little victories like that, I'm like, hell yes, look at what I did. That's funny. That is funny. I took the name of a well-known iconic character, suited her for my own purposes here, and I still was able to figure out a robotic name. Come on, that's a victory every day.
100%. I think I started, when I started reading this, I recently got into annotating my books and
I
highlighting.
love when people do that, yeah.
And I never used to do that before, but I've read a few books recently that I was like, I need to highlight this because this is brilliant, or this is awesome.
Oh,
and you. I highlighted the Nurse Ratchet's her official name. And as I got into the dialogue, I was like, no, Nurse Ratchet needs her own color. And I feel like her color to me is brown, because she's very, straightforward and no frills, no nonsense.
Right, exactly.
So her highlighter color and her tab is brown.
I love seeing, what's so cool about getting to go on tour and talk to people about books face to face is getting to see people bring in their tabbed books. I love tabbed books, man. I don't, and people, when they highlight with, I've seen people that keep separate journals where they write out character traits and stuff like that with the books that they read. I don't know how people have time for that. More power to them. But it's so cool because it shows how invested people are to the story. It shows how they are relating to the characters, how they're loving what they're reading. And there's no greater compliment an author can receive than when a reader walks up to their table with their book full of tabs and highlights and stuff like that. I love it.
Do you annotate when you read, or?
I do. I typically annotate when I'm reading nonfiction, because there's certain, I love reading any kind of book, but nonfiction is something that I have ADHD. So it's something that I force myself to want to pay attention to. So when I am reading nonfiction, like right now, I'm reading David Grant's The Wager. It's about a ship that crashed in the 1700s, and there was cannibalism and mutiny and all of this stuff involved. And it's so good, but I'm taking my time and highlighting everything that I find enjoyable about it. My favorite book about writing is Stephen King's On Writing. And I have 3 copies of that because they're all filled with annotations, and I ran out of room. So I had to buy a new copy to make more room, and then I had to buy a 3rd copy to make more room because it's my favorite book about writing.
So, and another thing that just really stands out, I mean, for Rambo and Nurse Ratched, I mean, there's maybe 10 lines of dialogue between them at the beginning, and you know exactly who they are. You know, Rambo is very anxious and nervous, and that, along with his constant need to keep everything clean, I relate very strongly to that. So he is my people. But I just love the banter between them. When you're writing dialogue, are there certain things that you're kind of keeping in your mind to build that momentum and that banter between characters?
Yeah, because it's important to me that if you are going to be following these characters for the rest of the book, you have to care about them when things happen to them, and you have to want to do that. So I wanted to show the idyllic nature of what this life was and what it could be, but at the same time, I'm glad that you brought up Rambo's attributes, because in essence, he and Nurse Ratched are playing the Jiminy Cricket role, or the talking cricket role. They are the id and the ego. They are aspects of Victor's conscience, and they are representations of humanity. You have Rambo with his fear, his worry, his need for cleanliness, but also his bravery. You have Nurse Ratched with her cynicism, her anger, her knowledge, and it's just all of these things combined to make them aspects of Victor while having their own identity. So I want to make that as clear as possible. And I already knew exactly how they would sound, because the whole reason this story exists is because I bought a Roomba vacuum one day. And humans have a tendency to do this thing where we anthropomorphize or give human qualities to inanimate objects. It's just something that we do. See the brave little toaster, as we were talking about earlier. So I put googly eyes on him. And when you first turn on one of these machines, they go around your house and they map it out so they know where to go. And this little dork, his name is Hank, by the way, and no, I will not explain why I named him Hank. And he is going around my house, and 10 minutes into mapping out the house, he gets stuck in a corner and makes the saddest beeping sound I have ever heard a machine make. And it was like this entire idea exploded in my head. I have never had it happen before. I haven't had it happen since. I knew I'd be doing something with Pinocchio. I didn't know the parts that I wanted to make work. But as soon as I bought that dumb little Roomba vacuum machine, I knew who Rambo was. I knew he wasn't going to be the main character, because the main character was going to be human. But if there's going to be a human raised by machines, there needed to be a nursing machine, because she would need to be able to make sure he's healthy. Oh, but what if she was a sociopath? And then it just so happened that I had just watched One Flew Over Cuckoo's Nest, and that's where Nurse Ratched came from. So the idea of her being that way. So going into the story, I immediately had these fully formed characters and knew how they were going to sound.
I just love that. I think I would read an entire book of just Rambo and Nurse Ratched going back and forth together, like 100%.
Like an anti-children's story where it's illustrated, but it's still for adults, because that's the type of humor that they have. I would love to do something like that one day.
Gosh, Nurse Ratched's humor is just like the whole, where I have it marked on the entire dialogue about flirting and how Nurse Ratched knows how to flirt, and Victor clearly wasn't doing it wrong because, or wasn't doing it right because he wasn't aroused by what that was hysterical. I just loved all of that,
because it's that anthropomorphizing thing. It's giving human qualities to inhuman things. And while we have Victor, and a big, huge part of this story is about the dangers of the heart, not just the physical heart, but also the idea of the heart and what the heart wants. So you have Victor, who has a heart. You have Giovanni, Victor's quote unquote father, who has a heart that he made. And then you have this new machine that they find, Hap, who Victor gives a heart to create. Nurse Ratched and Rambo don't have hearts, but they still have arcs. They still have character motivations. They still have wants. And as they go along, you learn that they actually do have feelings. And at one point, one of the characters, Nurse Ratched, says, we may not feel what Victor does when it comes to the idea of love, but we know how we feel about him. And that is an approximation of love. And that's what I think the whole point of that is that these separate people came together and were able to build something out of nothing, literally in this case, because these things were nothing until they were built.
And you mentioned that, and one of the themes that I see recurring in, Under the Whispering Door, House in the Cerulean Sea, and in the Lives of Puppets, is the idea of found family.
Yeah.
And I mean, literally, this family built itself,
right,
and found itself. What's something that you love exploring in that theme through these very different settings in each book?
So I'm going to try to speak about this as civilly as I can. So I've had an issue as of late with the idea of promoting books as found family, that this is found family, this is found family, this is the trope. But I know that, and everybody knows that tropes come from very real places, but what most people don't know is that found family trope originally comes from the idea of queer people who are not accepted by the people who gave birth to them, who are supposed to love them unconditionally, and they have to go out and make their own families. My family consists of my brother, my sister, and everybody else is not related to any of us by blood. That is our family because we had to build our own. So when you hear this idea of the found family trope and it's gaining popularity, and that's wonderful, that's great, that's amazing that people do that. But I hope that people take the time to understand that that comes from a very real place for a lot of people, queer people, who don't get the love and support and respect that they deserve from people who should know better. So it's coming from a place of how I know the world can be, and that sometimes you have to build your love yourself with people who are willing to love you despite your everything. And those are the best kinds of people because they don't judge you. They don't care that you're queer or trans or black or white or whatever. They don't care. They love you for who you are. And that should be the most important thing.
I love that. And just as a side, I wrote, this isn't even a question, but I just wrote it down as a side note. I would absolutely love it if one day Linus, Arthur, Geo, and Victor somehow all found themselves at Karen's Crossing with Hugo and Wallace, because that is a mashup that I would be there for. One,
be
absolutely.
Like my own version of the Cozy Avengers.
It's like the fantasy dinner party that has
but
to
at the
happen.
same time, if they were at the tea shop, that means they probably all died. And I don't know if I want to go that direction quite yet with them. I still have a few things that I love about them being alive right now.
I mean, they could just, well, no, that's fair. Yeah. Okay.
Fair.
Yeah,
We'll leave them for now. But what I love about those books and people who pay attention to In the Lives of Puppets is you can find Easter eggs from both those books in the Lives of Puppets for eagle-eyed people paying attention.
Oh, okay. So I need to pay. I love
you need to highlight and tab.
There's like a whole different highlighter color that has to come out.
Exactly.
Because anytime an author can do Easter eggs and make references to Pat, that makes my heart so happy.
I will say that I do that only because I learned from the master who did it, Stephen King. He's one of my favorite authors, and he is well known that all of his books are essentially connected somehow in this weird multiverse, and he'll drop in an Easter egg in a new book from a book he wrote in the 80s, and I'm like, hell yes, I know what it means. I love it.
So I know In the Lives of Puppets is, of course, out in the world now. Are you bouncing around new projects right now that you're able to talk about?
I can't talk about a lot right now. There's a lot coming up, but we don't have no announcements have been made as of yet. I can say that we have the beginning of the Green Creek series, which comes out this summer with Wolf Song and Raven Song. We have the final two books, Heart Song and Brother Song, will be coming out in 2024. And then after that, they have I will have a new book out next year, and I can't talk about it. I have oh, you know what I can talk about? At some point in the future, I think we decided that it is going to be probably around the paperback for In the Lives of Puppets. I have written a brand new 10,000 word short story set in the same universe that is not about these characters. It's about a different time between human machines, and it is my first foray into a type of horror. And it's not like gruesome, violent horror. It's more like something is very wrong, like Stepford Wives kind of horror. I wanted to try something different. And so that is called Reduce, Reuse, Recycle. And that will be coming out at some point this year or 2024, but look forward to that.
That's really cool. What is your favorite part of exploring a genre or a writing style that you haven't gotten to get to yet?
Horror has always, horror has always been my great love. I read horror, I watch horror movies, horror TV shows, play horror video games. As I've gotten older, I've stopped caring about violence. I don't like to watch gory stuff. I don't know why. I used to be able to watch movies that were violent and gory, but now for some reason it twists me the wrong way, and I can't stomach that. So I love spooky atmospheric horror, and I've considered horror to be sacrosanct for so long. I've kind of chickened myself out from actually doing anything in it. But hell, man, I just turned 41. I'm not getting any younger. I might as well try something new. Well, I mean, what's the worst that could happen? The worst thing that could happen is that it comes out, nobody likes it. Oh no, what am I going to do? Go back to writing a billion other ideas that I had? That's totally fine. Or maybe it comes out and it's something new that I can try every now and then. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
I've never really read much horror, but I've recently started getting into it, and it's kind of, once you start, it's a rabbit hole that you can't really get out of.
Just a recommendation then for you guys and your listeners. I recently just read a new book that came out around the times of In the Lives of Puppets in April. It's called Ascension by Nicholas Binge. And I read it on tour, and I won't give away any of the plots, but it is about a mountain that mysteriously appears in the middle of the Pacific Ocean out at one day. It's the tallest thing that anybody's ever seen, and it follows a scientific team who goes to investigate. And it is very, very good. And it's a debut novel, and I was like, how, why, what? So I posted on on Instagram how much I enjoyed the book, and I tagged the author, and then his editor and agent reached out to me saying thank you. And I was like, I love him. I love it. I love it so much. I love it that we get to bring new writers out into the world and putting really cool and weird stuff out. I love cool, weird books.
Absolutely. I'm going to have to put that on my list now. My list never ends. Absolutely.
It's very good. It's really good for people just getting into horror, because it's not like gross or extremely violent. It's very spooky, and I really appreciated that.
And that's what I love, the books that like not scare you, but like kind of like make your stomach go, ooh, like something's not right. Like what you said.
I've been way down the rabbit hole though. So I will hold off from giving you further recommendations, because if I gave you some of the ones that I've read recently, you would probably never want to read books again. So we'll hold back on that.
Well, that you'll just have to like look out for the Instagram message going, okay, I'm ready for more.
Oh yeah. Oh, just you wait.
Well, everyone, In the Lives of Puppets is, as we mentioned, out in the world now. If you would like to order your own copy, please be sure to check out the show notes. You can find the link to our bookshop on bookshop.org. As always, bookshop.org supports our incredible writers. It supports the podcast, but most importantly, it supports all of the wonderful indie bookstores out there. And TJ, I think you might have to come back on the show at some point.
Hell yeah.
Because because given it's the summer of TJ, we're going to have questions.
Yeah, and I would love to see these happy smiles and everything after you guys have read the Green Creek books, and then have me back on, because I'm thinking you're going to be like, why did you do this to us? And I'll be like, ha 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 ha, I warned you.
We're writers and book readers, or of course we're masochists.
Yeah,
so
absolutely, absolutely.
We're like,
and it's
why
so
did
funny
you do
because
this to us?
when I tell people this, normally they're like, or when I think they would normally be like, I don't know about that, but they get this gleam in their eye, and I'm like, okay, you can roll, you can rock and roll with this. I got you.
Well, TJ, thank you so much for making time for us. We've had so much fun just picking your brain and getting to hear your thoughts on this book and writing and reading and all of it.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Have a great night.
All right, bye.
Bye.